Hi, and welcome to Screens in Focus, a special Halloween series from Screens in Focus. I'm Diana, and today we are diving into the Flanaverse, the world of Mike Flanagan. From The Haunting of Hill House to Midnight Mass to so many other TV shows and movies. We can't wait to talk about it. We also have TV and movie recommendations for you. Sam is here to join me. Hi, Sam. How are you?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
I'm great. I'm so glad you're here. Being a knowledgeable Mike Flanagan movie and TV watcher. So,
He's my favorite.
all
I'm
right.
so excited.
I know. Well, before we get into that, I want to pose our question of the day to our friends out there. And the question of the day is, who is your favorite horror director and what stands out in their body of work to you? We would love to know. You can comment here on YouTube or reach out to us on social media. You can get to all of that at screensinfocus.com. All of our social media links are there. They are also in the show notes. And also, you can call us and tell us. And that phone number is 669 223 8542 because we would love to know. And you could be featured in Screens in Focus. Wouldn't that be amazing? All right. So we are going to dive into some of Mike Flanagan's work because he's done quite a bit. And of course, like I said, Sam is the perfect person to do this with because I have watched series and movies, but I didn't realize they were Mike Flanagan's. I just knew I liked these TV movies and series. And I mentioned it to Sam and she said, well, I love Mike Flanagan. And I thought, oh, Mike Flanagan, this is a common denominator in all these things that are so great and that I'm watching. So when I was putting together the horror series, I thought, oh my gosh, we have to do an episode on Mike Flanagan's work, and Sam is the perfect person. So I'm so glad that you're here to talk about it. And I really want to start off with The Haunting of Hill House because one, I just truly, that's when I began to know who he really was. And I love this whole series. And I think all the lists that I've seen, it's like at the top of all the lists. Like people just love this series for so many reasons. It has family trauma, it's non-linear storytelling, and it has an emotional impact. So tell me what stands out to you in this series.
So I liked Mike Flanagan long before I really knew who he was too. Like he has a series of movies that he has one called Hush that is essentially a hearing impaired woman is in a house writing a book and there's an intruder and that's like it that and that's not really giving anything away and it's just about like that and I didn't know it was him and I watched it and it's like that's so scary anyway and then I knew that the show was coming out so I'm like, oh, of course I'll watch it. But my husband and I were in Portland, Oregon on vacation and I was like, well, I'm not going to wait because I'm not, we're here for a week and a half. Like I can't avoid spoilers or anything. So we would watch it. And when I tell you, like, being in someone else's home, because we did like Airbnbs, was like not the best idea we ever had. And I don't think I slept
my
all
gosh.
week, but I couldn't stop watching it because it was so
No,
good.
you can't. Yes.
So good. But I think so. I don't even know where to begin, Diana. I'm so excited. I think one of my favorite, not even, I guess my favorite episodes of the entire, like, maybe of, not, I'm not going to say of all of his work, but maybe just of Hill House was Two Storms. He does a lot of, my husband's really big into movies and how they're made. So he had a film minor. So he points out all these like technical things that Mike Flanagan does. And then I look them up and I'm intrigued. Like he has in that episode, there are a few extended single shot scenes, which just adds and heightens the tension and it also helps you to like immerse yourself in the family tragedy because it's one long shot and it doesn't stop and you just watch it and you're just like going along with it. And like poor sweet Nell just yelling and what's going to happen to her. So it's heartbreaking and the acting is phenomenal. Like just that he uses the same actors, which I
Yeah.
approve of because they all work together, they have great chemistry. But the kids, it's almost like the Stranger Thing kids. Like they're all fantastic actors for being so young, just so good. And they all look alike too. And that's like phenomenal. Like being able to find actors that you could easily believe be like the younger versions of the older actors. It's just so good. And I'm not sure what episode this is in, but another thing that I love is like he does some kind of like jump scares, but they're
Yeah.
not like not that jump scares don't have a purpose, but sometimes they're like cheap scares. And I feel like
Yeah.
with his jump scares, there's always something more to it. Like there's a
Yes.
scene where Shirley and Theo are driving, I think to go get Nell or to go do something at the house. And they're they're driving and Nell's supposed to pop out. And Victoria Pedretti was given like direction that the other two actors weren't, saying come a little bit early. And so their reactions are real. And I know that scene's coming and it still makes me jump every time. And like, I don't know if it's gotten worse because I'm expecting it. Their reactions, of course, are real because as Nell is, she's the she's full bet neck lady. Like she's got the full horror thing going on.
I want to say about that scene that you're talking about, though, that's the scene that like sticks in my brain when I think about this whole series. Like
Mhm.
that sticks out to me. So I watched the series, of course, I loved it, but I did go back and watch an episode or two. And one of the ones that I went back to see was the Bent Neck Lady episode. And it just reminded me of how it's just what such a good storyteller, such good direction, and seeing Nell and her past and just her relationship with her siblings and how alone she felt. It was so hard. And then also, like you said, seeing her from a young girl and seeing when she first saw the bent neck lady,
Ooh.
and I know, just as a small, yeah, when she would wake up. And I think for me, one of the reasons this really impacted me is I feel that I have that sleep paralysis. And I thought everybody had that or has experienced that. See, you're saying no either. I went back to work and I was telling them, I said, oh, I was rewatching this and, she has sleep paralysis. They're like, what's that? I'm like, wait, haven't you ever had sleep paralysis? Now I'm not awake. I don't think, because otherwise I'm having horror movies,
Yeah.
but I have what I believe are dreams. I'm dreaming of something's happening to me, and I can't move
Mhm.
and I can't scream. And I see my husband next to me, and I'm like, nothing will come out. It's like
Mhm.
I'm trying everything I can to get him to hear me, and he can't, he's just like sleeping. And I'm like, and then something like is happening, like horror type, like different times, different things. This has happened to me several times. This hasn't happened to me just once. It's
Mhm.
happened to me a lot. Well, not a lot, not like every day or anything, but what I mean, it's happened to me throughout my life. So the fact that she's having this, I know what she feels like, or
Mhm.
I think I do, except for hers are real
Yeah.
experiences with something that's happening. So
It must be terrifying, by the way. I can't even
yes, it
imagine.
is. But what ends up happening is I end up waking myself up. And what I did read about it, and it is what her eventual husband does tell her, is that your brain is awake, but your body isn't yet.
Mhm.
So it's catching up. So what he's telling her as this technician guy is accurate. Because I went and read it myself.
Mhm.
So that's what's happening. So I'm like, is that what's really happening to me? Because I feel as though I really am in a dreaming this.
Mhm.
And when I actually wake up, then everything's normal. Like I can move, everything's
Yeah.
fine. So I think it's me dreaming. So am I dreaming having sleep paralysis, or did I really have it because it's in that half awake, half sleeping thing? But I don't know. So the whole point of this is watching her have it, knowing that I'm experiencing something
Mhm.
similar, even though I think mine are dreams. It's so scary. And then also her story along of everything that she's experiencing when she takes her brother to get drugs. And I'm thinking, don't do it. But then I understand why she feels she needs to
Yeah.
do it.
I have a twin brother, which is like, and it's kind of freaky. I'm not like the shortest person, but I'm not the tallest either. I'm like 5'6", and he's like 6'3", and like those two are also like a height difference. So it was like very like eerie, like,
Yeah.
like how close it was.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, like it's insane to think about like what you would do for like a sibling. Cause like you see him in pain and you're like, oh, I don't really want to do that, but
Yeah. Or any family member. That can happen with any family member too, But yeah, a twin, that's just even different, even more connected. But it's like, it's wrong. And it's like, but what do you do? What do you do? And then they are able to coerce you into, I need this just for me to go in. Look, I'm getting better. So the fact that it's all in there, it's the
so
story of
relatable.
all these. Yes. So relatable with all of the siblings that are in this. So, yeah. So I just thought that episode was really just a great episode. And I just loved it.
So there are 5 Crane siblings, and I learned after watching it that they're all supposed to stand for a stage of grief.
Oh.
So Steven's the eldest, and he's denial. He is a nonfiction horror writer who doesn't believe in anything he's writing until the very end of the season, because he's forced to open his eyes and not just try and like rationalize it or brush it aside. So he's denial. And then Shirley she's like the next eldest, and she's anger. So after their mom died, she had to become like the mom of the kids, because she's the eldest daughter, and we automatically just hop to. She's the most outwardly resentful and the most angry of all the siblings, which stems when things are out of her control. And as like an adult, she's just this like, she's kind of like a typical, like a bee of like a woman. And that's like just so, but it's not, even Mike Flanagan doesn't write a typical character, because she's got a bunch of layers. Like she had to grow up so early, and she didn't get to have a childhood because she had to raise her siblings after her mom died, which I think part of her resentfulness is probably because her younger sister Theo got to kind of be like a kid, and they're probably closer in age, and that had to have been hard. But Theo stands for bargaining. She has like a power where she can, like, if she touches a thing, then she can feel certain, like almost like a memory or something of like what happened. So she wears gloves to kind of control people, like to let people in whenever it's like, good for her. And she wears those gloves to stifle any and all of the feelings until she wants to feel a thing. And you see she's like kind of lonely, like she has hookups, but she doesn't have anyone close to her because that would be just hard. She's a middle child who just rationalizes everything. But Luke stands for depression, which that's kind of maybe clear, but he uses drugs as a coping mechanism because of the trauma his mom unfortunately inflicted upon him when he was a child. Like she tried to kill him and his sister and the neighbor girl. Then she actually did succeed in killing like the neighbor girl, but and to have the rest of the shit happen, oh my gosh, and then your dad.
Right.
But he is haunted by the memories of Hill House and what went down there. And just they're in a family like that, how do you cope? And he chooses drugs, unfortunately. But Nell's acceptance, oh, it's so sad just thinking about like just, oh my god, like she's passed and she's a ghost, and she tells all of her siblings that she forgives them for all their mistakes, and she sums it up.
That's very powerful.
It's so powerful, and I feel like that is something that like it's like a radical
people
acceptance.
Don't get that. Yeah, people don't get that. So the fact that in this, even though they're all facing horror and trauma and all kinds of things, it's kind of nice that they can see her and she can relay that to them in this house.
Mm-hmm. Oh, it's so wonderful what she says, though. It says, it wouldn't have changed anything. I need you to know that. Forgiveness is warm, like a tear on a cheek. Oh, no, I can't do that. I'm already tearing up.
Yeah.
I'll get it together.
Yeah. It's hard. It's hard because, that's what happens when you watch something that it just has these emotions, something that connects with you. I mean, everything that you went through. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
I wrote that in there. These characters are relatable, or their circumstances or their situations or whatever it might be. And if you think about it, all these siblings lived, except for the dad knew what happened to the mom, but none of them knew what happened exactly. They just knew their mom wasn't there anymore. So can you imagine the questions that they had, but they knew this house had such control that they didn't want to bring it up because, they were just kind of afraid to. So they figured out a way to compartmentalize what they are feeling. And I'm sorry, the reason we're laughing is because I can't say the damn word. It just won't come out correctly. But anyway, they do because they have to keep on living and keep on going. But they're like, well, what really happened to our mom? Which they find out in the end. So if you haven't seen it, you should see it. And if you have seen it, then you know what we're talking about. But
and it makes it
so it's just their way of coping.
The only adult in the room doesn't know how to process any of it. He thinks he's protecting his kids but not telling them exactly what happened. But in the end, he actually makes it worse because they make up their own stories. And instead of talking about it, they push it down. Like you said, they compartmentalize and it's just not healthy. And then, it affects them in ways they don't even really understand.
I was so mad at that therapist of Nell's telling her to go back to the place. And I know he's just a regular therapist, not realizing that where he's sending her, but just saying, oh, you need to confront this and do this. And then she goes and does that. And it's like, okay, that was the worst idea, sending her there to do that. So
I feel like any house that has a name, like if she talks about Hill House, I'm going to give it a Google and see, because, if she's in therapy and she's talking, I'm sure he knows, about the deaths and what happened. And I wouldn't, I would probably do my own. Maybe that's just because I grew up in a world where, that kind of stuff happens. And maybe it's supposed to be like how they never call a thing a zombie because they don't really know what a zombie is. So maybe it's like that, where they don't have this in that universe.
Well, I have to say we've learned a lot from watching all these horror and zombie and everything else. Like, we know how to there's still probably a lot to learn, but we have some inklings of how we handle things or how we see things, or if we saw a house called Hill House. Let's just think about what this means before we go walking in.
But I think the kind of things that we're talking about, though, definitely is just, it's a testament to how Flanagan can blend horror with human drama. The hauntings aren't just external, but that they're also internal in a way. He definitely explores how trauma and grief can take on a haunting life of their own, emphasizing that the emotional scars of the past can be just as terrifying as any ghost. And what I do if there is I don't even know, my takeaway from the show is that people who die in the house, they're kind of always around, in the house. And as long as the house exists, they're going to be there. And I feel like that's the same for anyone who's lost a loved one. Is just because they're gone doesn't mean they're not necessarily, I'm not saying with you, but you have your memories and you have the stories. And I've lost both of my parents and I talk about them all the time. I don't have any new stories, but they were funny people. And I feel like that's, that's such it's just I don't know. I'll never not talk about them as long as I'm alive.
Right.
And I think that's also why I related a lot to the Hill House, is because it was just so good.
Yeah, it is. It is. Talking about the characters and just all of the themes that we can relate to. I also do want to mention the flashbacks that he uses in this, because that's a majority of what he does. And that's how we learn things, is through seeing what they experienced as kids, what they experienced in that house. And I love that kind of storytelling already. So when it starts and we know we're going to learn by experiencing these flashbacks and seeing them at different ages, I'm all in because I absolutely love that kind of storytelling.
Mm-hmm. So I love the ending of Hill House so very much because even though it is kind of wrapped up nice and neatly, there's a little bit of a question of did they actually make it out or are they stuck in the red room? Because the very final scene is all of them around like a table with a cake in front of them and they're celebrating Luke's 2-year sobriety. But behind them is the window and the red room, which is a huge part of Hill House and their childhood. So the red room, each child was in there without really knowing that they were in there because the red room gave them what they needed. So for Nellie, it was a toy room. For Luke, it was a treehouse. For Theo, it was a dance studio. For Stephen, it was a game room. And for Shirley, it was a family room. Even the parents had a thing. So Olivia had a reading room. And I guess the dad didn't get any. Sorry, they include the mom, but not the dad. That's very weird. And in the back of each of like the rooms for each of the people, there's a window. And I think it's always like the same kind of length. So at the end of the final episode, when they're all in the red room around the cake, kind of celebrating, there's a window behind them. So it's kind of, you're like, did they make it out? And I love that it's open to interpretation and conversation, which is something that also Mike Flanagan does so well.
I forgot about that. So that is so cool of not really knowing. You're right. Is it 2 years? Do they have, because you're right. If they're in a room that it gives them everything they want,
would they ever leave?
Appear to be happy. Yeah. Are they in the room getting what they want or did they make it out and get what they want? Oh my gosh.
And it's kind of nice too, because like at the very end, they're all around this cake and they all get some kind of happy ending. Like Luke is celebrating 2 years. Stephen's having a baby with his wife. Theo brings her girlfriend around. And Shirley tells her husband that she cheated, but they've started to reconcile. So even she's getting a happy ending. And it's just so like, which makes it all the more tragic because if they're all dead, but then I guess Trish probably wouldn't be there because Theo brings her girlfriend but also it might be in her imagination. So
exactly. That might be true. Might be in her imagination. In her imagination. You just never know. Oh my gosh. Woo, I love that. And I also want to just bring up, and it doesn't happen just in this series here, but in Mike Flanagan in his work, I love the use of flashbacks because, and it is in this particular series. We do see them as at their age that they are now. And then we go back to when they are kids and everything they experience. And I just love it. I love the flashbacks and such and that type of storytelling. I just think it's great.
Well, it's kind of nice because like, they say that like you should like show, don't tell. And I feel like even though like there's like dialogue and things, it's still more of a show than just like you could tell me the same story, but it's a lot easier if you can like see it. There's more emotion behind it.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. As you can tell, we really like The Haunting of Hill House. So, but there are others that we absolutely love too. And, Bly Manor, Midnight Mass, and just other movies that he has done. So, Sam, would you want to share maybe one of those TV shows or movies that stuck out to you, one of his other works?
So I really enjoyed Bly Manor, which came on the heels of The Haunting of Hill House. And I expected it to be not the same as Hill House, but I guess just as scary as Hill House was because that show had so many like good, just like scares, and there were ghosts that you looked for, which also continued into Bly Manor. Like I love going back on like a rewatch and trying to find like all the ghosts and then looking them up and seeing what they are. But what I love most about Bly Manor is it focuses on both loss and the inability to move on. It deals with how grief can affect people and on how dwelling on loss and grief hurts those who are still around. I love how it talks about how being stuck in grief prevents the grieving from moving on and living their lives. But like I said earlier, unlike Hill House, Bly Manor wasn't as scary, but it focused more on atmosphere and mood because it was tense and it was suspense. And like there were some scary and creepy things, but it wasn't the same type of horror. It was more like
Yeah.
it was more of a gothic horror, I think. The core theme of Bly Manor, in my opinion, is love, whether that's romantic, familial, or platonic. But then on the flip side of that, it talks about how, or it explains how love can also become twisted and obsessive and tragic.
Mm.
So like you see the love between Peter and Rebecca and how like it gets obsessive so quickly, and not, spoilers, but like some bad stuff happens. But then you see like the love between Danny and Jamie, which is like romantic, and then you see Viola and Perdita, and that was like familiar. And then Hannah and Owen, which I guess is supposed to be the example for platonic, but I don't necessarily know that I agree with that the more I think about it, because they were, I don't even know, not that you have to ship every character, but there was something between them, I think, and they were so sweet to each other between all of those, because Viola and Perdita were like the first ones. Then you had Hannah and Owen and kind of Danny and Jamie, but that just illustrates how love can transcend time, but also keep people in the past, because even though not all the ghosts in Bly Manor, they're not all evil, but they're all a lingering presence of love, grief, and memory, showing that when love, when it's unresolved or obsessive, can be a form of haunting.
Yeah.
If you can never move on, then that's a haunting of its own, right? And
Yeah.
it's just,
Mm-hmm.
oh my God, it makes you think, and it's so it's just what I love about him so much.
Yeah.
He also uses horror as a tool to explore emotional and psychological things as well. Like the ghosts in Bly Manor are not malicious, but the remnants of those individuals who were shaped by their own emotional struggles. Like they all had some kind of inner turmoil or inner demons.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then like Viola, she's like the lady of the lake, and she haunts Bly Manor because of her obsessive desire to hold on to her own life and her possessions. And her refusal to let go of her earthly attachments turns her into a ghost, one who unknowingly brings death to others. Like, I don't know how many people she's actually killed, and that, then their ghosts are kind of floating around or doing whatever. And that's just, adds to all of the sadness. Danny, she takes on the spirit of Viola, the lady in the lake, and she's able to keep her at bay. But she knows eventually that she's going to have to go back to Bly Manor, because she's either going to harm like someone around her, or she's going to go and take care of it herself. And that is so tragic, because we all have an expiration date, and it makes you think, and you feel so bad for Danny, because that's the love of her life. And it got cut short because of some tragic happenstance of her deciding to be a nanny in this, in this like English estate. And oh my gosh, all the houses that they're in, and like the sets. I don't know. Mike Flanagan's just, he knows what he's doing, I think.
Mike Flanagan, he just knows how to tell a story. I did watch Bly Manor. I did enjoy it. I know I really liked it when I saw it, but I haven't seen it since. So it's hard for me to remember all the details. But one of the other series that I did really enjoy was Midnight Mass. And I remember that standing out to me as like, oh, I really like this type of horror story.
Mm-hmm.
And I think because it did it blended horror with faith, and it just explores religious fanaticism and its dangers and more. It's even more than that. But I think that initially that was intriguing to me. And so that is why I tuned in. And, we see these people on this island, and to me, the central themes were human need for forgiveness, which is interesting because I heard you say that about The Haunting of Hill House, about having forgiveness. So he probably tends to have some of those themes, play throughout different movies or TV series that he does. And it's also forgiveness, not just for others, but for yourself. And seeking that forgiveness, like, trying to get that forgiveness, or, what you think you need. And it also drives people for their personal growth and to relieve that guilt. I mean, that's what you want, right? You want that forgiveness so that it'll relieve some of that and just connect to a spiritual peace. So in Midnight Mass, we saw so many people looking for this, where we saw Father Paul's confession for his desire, his younger self wanting that forgiveness. We saw that with Riley's struggle. So Riley, I don't know if he's the main character in the beginning, I suppose. So, but he grapples with the guilt of his past actions because this is not giving anything away, because the very first episode, very first thing we see is what appears to be like a death of maybe a DUI or
It was,
yeah.
he's drunk driving and he hits another car and like a 16-year-old girl dies or something like that.
Dies, right. And he goes to jail. And when he's released, he goes back home, which is where he's going.
Crockett Island.
To this yeah, Crockett Island, which is where they live. So, and then we see Bev, her fanaticism. And, you know, she's just an extreme
nutcase.
Yeah, exactly.
She's a bad person. She's a bad character. Or she's a good character, but a bad person.
Yeah, well, because she doesn't have empathy or forgiveness, but she claims to be like this super religious person.
She's super pious.
And I think we might have you talked about this earlier on about how all the characters are in other series, but they're playing different. I mean, they're the same actors, different characters. But it's funny here because when I was going back and watching several of episodes of different ones, I said, "Oh, that's so and so. Oh, that's so and so." I'm like, "Oh my gosh!" So I didn't realize it, especially in the first one.
Oh yeah,
I saw it. I knew the characters, but then when I'm watching the second one, or this
Steve's
one,
wife.
yeah. Yeah. So it's just, you see them, you know, throughout playing different roles. And then there's Erin, her acceptance. So, you know, she embodies that personal growth, accepting her mistakes and seeking forgiveness, you know, even in the face of tragedy. So we do see all these characters, you know, reaching for that. And I know you probably love this series too. So what did you think about this one?
I loved it. I don't even know. There's just, it wasn't what I was expecting. Like I said, I don't know what to expect a lot of the time when it comes to Mike Flanagan stuff. I just know I'm going to watch it. But I'm not very religious, but I grew up in a very religious family. So this is like hitting home with like just all of it. And it was so good. It makes you think, I don't know, it's just so good. But it's also like genuinely creepy and scary at times. Like there's like, because there's a vampire in it, and he's this creepy like winged thing, and you don't really get to see it until like you do, but like you see him like skulking around and like doing stuff, and that sometimes is creepier than actually like seeing seeing him as like in his full glory, because you're like, yeah, I mean, it's terrifying, but my imagination's worse. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I love the pieces that we see that when we don't know what's happening, because initially we don't know what's happening. We're like, oh, we see these cats. Why are all these cats dead on the beach? And then later on, and then they talk about the missing
that poor
priest initially, and like, oh, why didn't he come back? And why is this new person coming? And then, oh, something came to my mind. Oh, the doctor's mom and how she starts aging backwards, like a lot. And you're like, holy crap, you look younger than your daughter. Again, people in the other series. So it's just, the story just keeps unfolding, and all these layers, and all just learning about everybody. So it's just, and even Riley's parents and such. So it's just, he's so good. Mike Flanagan's so good at creating these characters and stories and themes that we see.
I think he's so good at it because he's not afraid to ask like difficult existential questions, like about life and death and the afterlife. And I think it's hard to hit on religion because it's a hard topic to talk about, because it's so controversial, and it's a hot topic or something. Not the old clothing shop, but but I've read it a few places that Midnight Mass, it actually touches upon. So Mike Flanagan, he is I think many years like completely sober, which is fantastic, and kudos to him, and we love that. So Midnight Mass, I think Riley is his way of kind of like writing about like maybe his journey a little bit and being able to forgive himself for
Yeah.
all the things that he
Yeah.
may have done. I don't know what he's done, but I'm assuming if he's
Right.
sober,
Right.
like
Yeah, putting parts of yourself
yep.
into a writing, or exploring that, at least, if this had happened, how, how would I feel, and how would I relate to people, and what would happen. So,
And then I think
yeah.
the character of Erin is such a good character because she's kind of how we all should be. We should forgive ourselves for things that we've done because we are just human. And like,
Yeah.
it's just Mike Flanagan at his best. And there's one scene that I'm not going to say anything about, but it's like there's a thing that's happening. You don't really know what it's two characters, they're talking, something happens and it cuts to black and you just hear the noises of what's happening. And I sometimes still think of that and it gives me chills. I was
Yeah.
watching it with my brother and my husband, and I think we all were just like, where's the dog? Let's go hug the dog. Like, we can't, that's like, so we had to like turn it off, turn the lights on, and we're like, no, ma'am, it is too much.
Do you know, I was watching a lot of people on YouTube watching the Haunting of Hill House, and they were some of them were making me laugh because they were hiding there. I mean, that's how I would be.
Oh,
Like,
I
I
watch it
should
like
probably
this.
put a camera and watch. Yeah, they you see them go like this, or they're like, they put their shirt up. They're like, oh my god, it's so funny because I do that too.
Oh
But
yeah.
it's funny watching somebody else's reaction.
Mm-hmm.
Watching them watch this. But
so good.
All to say that we love Mike Flanagan. He scares the heck out of us. He's such a great storyteller. He has great characters. And so, Sam, tell me, what of all, of his work in a broader sense, what resonates with you?
So I think what I love most about him and why I think I can go back and watch the same episodes and I'll watch anything that he puts out, because I know that his shows and his movies are always about more than they appear to be on the surface. Like, you have to dive deeper to really, like, it's not just a horror movie. It's not just a love story. It's way more than that. And I love that in almost every TV show, there's usually a unifying theme, which makes the discussion and repeat viewings more fun. He writes his characters well, and you feel for them. Like, even though Bev Keane was such a jerk face, I did feel really bad for her at the very end when she's trying to dig in the sand to get under, to get away from the sun. And I was like, oh my God, like maybe she'll finally get there. And I hated her. I couldn't, I was like rooting for her to like something bad to happen.
Yeah.
Because the characters feel like they're real. They're real. They are well realized people. They're not cardboard cutouts. It's not necessary. The stories themselves not necessarily are about the scary things that happen, but they're more about the characters and how they deal with those events. He certainly knows how to create tension. He lets it build, and then he releases it like a rubber band with a climactic scene, like Two Storms, or the scene I was just describing about how we turn on all the lights, and it's just, anyway. But then he uses jump scares, like I said earlier in the pod. He makes jump scares so much better than anyone else. They're not typical. They're not done for cheap. They're done in impactful ways, like that scene we were talking about earlier in the car. They're arguing and they're not paying attention, and Nell needs them to get their shit together. And by scaring them, they like stop, and then they, fight it out, and then they go do what they're supposed to do. But if she hadn't have done that, or if there hadn't been that jump scare, then it would have just been an annoying scene of siblings like kind of bickering and doing stuff. It's just so good. So good.
So I have the same answer that you do. I have that it's scary, that we feel for the characters. They're strong characters. They're the reoccurring actors, and they have these long monologues, which a lot of times there isn't that much of a monologue, but you have people really saying how they feel, and that's coming across to us. And they're emotional. Yeah, they're emotional stories. And something that you had said earlier about how, and yes, they're the jump scares, but they're there intentionally, and it really does scare you and add to the story. But when you were talking about how some of these shots are long shots, and I was thinking about when the dad in The Haunting of Hill House was walking down the hallways, and when he turns, it's different people at different ages or different shadows, and you're like, what? And then you're like, that's when those people were putting their shirts up and
That's
everything
me.
else and looking, because you don't know what you're going to see, because in a horror, anything can be there. It could be the past, the future, a ghost,
hmm
who knows, a monster, your child, whatever it
hmm
is. So nothing, a different room, a different time. So all of that, playing with all of that is just such great storytelling. And I just think the emotion of it all, and connecting and thinking about forgiveness and putting ourselves in those situations. So I think that that's what resonates with all of us and why we tune in all the time.
I feel like even though like we talked about how scary it is, the things that are quote unquote scary aren't necessarily, they're not inherently scary. Like there's like a big tall guy who like floats around, which is terrifying, but it's just a guy. Like he's abnormally big, but it's not like an alien or a zombie or like a werewolf or something where it's like, it's more like passively scary. It's not as unbelievable, maybe. Oh my gosh. I love that.
Yeah. After talking about these things that we love from Mike Flanagan, I would love to know, what is your personal favorite? What is your favorite series, your favorite film, or maybe just a piece?
So I really love The Haunting of Hill House. That's like my favorite, a TV show of his. But I really, really, really love Doctor Sleep. I've never seen The Shining, so I didn't really know anything going into it. But like I looked it up and read enough to know like the backstory of it, and it was just so good. And I feel like it didn't get the attention it deserved because it's such a phenomenal movie. So it's with a Ewan McGregor and Rebecca Ferguson. Then you got Cliff Curtis, Zahn McClarnon, who was phenomenal in Dark Wind on AMC. Fantastic. And I just feel like it deserved more than it got. I don't really know why. Have you seen it?
Yes, I love it. I was going to say, I am 100% on track agreeing with you on my personal favorite. It
hmm
is The Haunting of Hill House and Doctor Sleep. I haven't seen Doctor Sleep in a while, but when it came out, because I remember I really wanted to watch it.
hmm
I'm like, I want to watch this. But when I watch it, I was totally floored. I'm like,
hmm
this is fantastic. And I have seen The Shining. The Shining is not my favorite movie, but I
hmm
know it's because I kept saying, God, it's such a, people are revering this movie. And I would try to watch it. I'm like, this really isn't my favorite type
Yeah.
of horror movie. But the impact of it, what's happening. It's basically like this house having this hold on you. And so when I watched Doctor Sleep, I just thought it was so good. It was very kind of refreshing in a
hmm
way. So I totally agree with you with that being one of my personal favorites. All right. So, friends out there, we've talked about Mike Flanagan and all of his works, not all of his work, some of his work. There's a lot more movies out there. So, go check those out because there's so much more. And there's a lot more series that we didn't even touch upon here that are on Netflix that we do appreciate and like. But we wanted to touch upon our favorite works here. And so, with that, the question of the day was, who is your favorite horror director? What movie or series of theirs stands out to you the most? So I have a feeling I might know yours,
Yeah.
but who would you say, Sam? Who would you say?
um, Probably Mike Flanagan. I don't really typically care about who directs stuff or pay attention to like repeat things. This first like director, whatever you want to call it, where I'm like, no, everything he's doing, I'm gonna watch. So it's
I
really
love that.
rare for me because
Yeah.
everything he
And a lot of
does
people,
just gets so he just I think he's getting better the more he does stuff. He gets, because you learn as you go along, and I don't think he's afraid to like just try new things. And like he's got a new Exorcist project coming out, I think like next year or in 2 years maybe. And I love the original Exorcist, so I'm in. What about you?
yeah. Well, this is hard. And I've seen a lot of horror in my day. I mean, Hitchcock, we talked about him earlier, and I love so many Hitchcock movies. I just like the feel of them. Mike Flanagan, everything that we've talked about, he has done like numerous things that are so amazing. M. Night Shyamalan is so great. I love his work. So I love that there are horror directors, filmmakers that we really love. But I'm going to say right now, I'm really loving Jordan Peele. He's
I knew
just
that.
because I just can't help it. Yeah, I'm just so fascinated with what he does. And I'm going to watch everything Mike Flanagan does too. But with you saying like, oh, I'm going to watch everything he does. That's how I feel about Jordan Peele. It's like, I'm going to watch everything he does. So that's who I would pick. But, friends out there, we want to know who your favorite director is in horror. And please share it with us here on YouTube, on social media. And don't forget, you can reach us by calling us at 669-223-8542 because we would love to hear from you and know who your favorite director is. We are at our Fresh Screens segment where we're going to share with you our latest TV and movie recommendations or what we're excited to watch. So, Sam, what do you have for us today?
So I have a few things that I'm excited to watch. I'm really pumped for Agatha All Along. And I know when this comes out, it'll probably be on episodes like 3 or 4, something like that. But I'm so excited for it. I'm actually kind of excited for Grotesquerie, which is going to be on FX. And it's Ryan Murphy. I think it's his like next, not quite American Horror Story, but I think it's him trying to do American Horror Story, but maybe a little more not adult, but maybe more rooted in like, I say like real, but I think it still has some like ghosts or like spooky things, but I don't think it's gonna be quite as like wacky as American Horror Story was. And then I'm actually really, really excited for What We Do in the Shadows. It's the 6th and final season, and that's going to be also on FX, and that starts on October 21st. And I think that show was something that has just gotten better the longer it's been on. I love all the cameos. It's just so fun. So I'm looking forward to
I
that.
love those. Yeah, I love all those. Okay, so for me, I watched From. This is on Prime, and it's an MGM series. I just watched it like in the last 3 weeks, maybe. I binged both the 2 seasons, and the third season is coming out on September 22nd, which by the time this airs, it'll be out. Oh my gosh, I was so scared because I was watching it by myself. And every night when I had to let my dog out to go to the bathroom, I was a little bit worried. I had to look out. Can I let him out? Yeah, I can let him out because it's dark out. And so if anyone who hasn't watched this, it's about these people that are stuck in a city. They don't know how they got there, meaning, their vehicle stumbles upon this fallen down tree, and then they start circling the city or this town, not city, this town, and then they're stuck there. And they all come from different states and places, and they don't know how they get here, and they can't get out, and there's monsters at night.
Oh, no, thank you.
It's very scary. It's very scary. So Harold Perrineau is in this, and he is from Lost. That's what I know him from. And he's just so good. He's the sheriff mayor of the town. Have you seen this?
No, but I've seen commercials for it. And I think it was like around this time. I'm like, well, I'm not going to watch a scary thing before I go to bed. So, but it's definitely like on my list though, because I actually love him. He's fantastic. Harold Perrineau.
Yeah. It has, I can't wait for the third season. I'm like, yeah. I want to watch it. I don't know why. I want to be scared now. I'm like, I want to be scared. It's good. It's a good story. I like it. So I'm trying to get my husband to watch it. So we'll see. And I do want to bring up, we're talking about Mike Flanagan. So he has done a lot of work with Stephen King's, with Gerald's Game, and also with Dr. Sleep, right? So there's stories of Stephen King. So now I heard about this Life of Chuck that is getting all the buzz at the Toronto, at the Toronto International Film Festival. It just won the People's Choice Award, which is one of the highest honors there. And also, I guess it can be connected to possibly winning an Oscar. So who's to say? Could it be in the realm? Could a horror get in there? I don't know, but it'll be fun to find out. So I'm looking forward to whenever we'll be able to watch it. I don't know when. I looked it up. There was no release date to us. It's just at the festival for now. So, and it has 85% Rotten Tomatoes as of now. So that could go up. We don't know. And I also want to bring up Halle Berry returns to horror with Never Let Go.
I just saw commercials for this.
Yeah, that comes out September 20th. Look for that movie because it looks really good. It's an emotional supernatural thriller. It's about a mother and her protecting her sons from an insidious force in the forest, a survival tale. We love survival. So
I do, but I also hate forests. So I'm not gonna, that's just gonna make me like never want to go out in a forest.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. All right. Well, okay. That's what we have recommended for you. We would love to hear your Halloween watch list. You can give us a shout at Screens in Focus at 669-223-8542. And make sure to tune in to our next episode on the Many Faces of Fear. We're going to talk about zombies and paranormal and all kinds of horror. So be sure to tune into that because we have spooky goodness for you. I want to thank Sam for being here today. Thank you, Sam.
Thank you so much for having me. I had a blast. It's finally nice to make another person listen to me blather on about Mike Flanagan other than my husband and my dog. I'm sure they're like, oh, yeah, go talk to Diana like a little bit.
Yes, please come talk to me. I love it. I'm so glad that we did this podcast episode. It's always fun talking with you about any TV or movies, but I knew this one would fit you so good, and it does. And you have just so much great insight and a wealth of knowledge. So I love it. And I love it when people are just as passionate about certain TV or movies that impact them or that they can relate to. So thank you. Okay. Thank you, friends out there, for joining our Screams in Focus series. We are grateful you joined us, and we hope something that we said today inspired you, made you smile, or even gave you the heebie-jeebies, or made you want to go watch one of the movies that we're talking about. Don't forget to subscribe to Screens in Focus at screensinfocus.com. All of our information is there. So just go to our website. It's also in our show notes. And I want to remind you to share this podcast with a friend because we would love more people in our TV community. And I want to remind you to keep watching, keep exploring, and keep those screens in focus. And we will see you next time. Bye.
Bye.